Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here this beautiful Saturday morning. My name is Mina Jane, and I'm one of the programming librarians at the Cary Library. And we're really pleased to be here with Jeremy Singh, a Lexingtonian runner, and Becca Pizzi. We've been listening to her, and I'm just like, she does everything. Running, traveling, inspiring. It's pretty amazing. And she's an author as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about both of their intros in just a minute. I just wanted to let you know that we're doing the Q&A through the Q&A. So please write your questions there, and Jeremy will be asking them of Becca through the program. If you have comments or tech issues, please put them in the chat, and I'll be taking care of those. So I also wanted to thank the Cary Library Foundation for always supporting our adult programs, and I wanted to let you know that you can buy Becca's book from her website. She will sign it from there. And as everybody knows, gold, signed books are gold. Not a gold medal, but just gold. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Jeremy, who will introduce Becca. Jeremy is a Lexingtonian. He started running, after his father had some heart problems and he wanted to be healthier. He completed his first marathon in 2018 and decided to go further with a 50-kilometer race in 2019. This year, Jeremy is running 50 miles. He likes to set hard challenges for himself and then put into the work to complete them. He wants to cultivate the voice in his head, pushing him to do hard things while weakening the voice, telling him to stop, sleep in, and take the easy path, which we all know is a very strong voice. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy, who will introduce Becca. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you so much, Mina. I'm so excited to be a part of this event and have this conversation with Becca. Before I introduce Becca, I just want to plug the Tricorn Toastmasters really quick. Without them, I wouldn't be a part of this event. They got the word out about my 50-mile run and got the community to come out and support me, got an article written in the newspaper, which led to this. So I'm grateful to them. If anybody out there is ever interested in working on their public speaking or leadership, or just be a part of a really cool, diverse, fun, supportive group, please check us out. We meet on Tuesdays at noon on Zoom. November 17th, we're having a demo meeting that's open to the public. I'll share the link in the chat. And now on to Becca. Becca has done so much running. It's amazing. She's completed the World Marathon Challenge twice and is the world record holder. If you don't know what that is, it's 7 marathons over 7 days on 7 different continents. She's also run 81 marathons and is currently on a quest to run a marathon in every state. She's also written a children's book. I have my copy right here. I read this book with my 5-year-old daughter, who has shown an interest in running. And since we started reading this, she keeps asking me, Dada, when are we going to go for another run? So thank you, Becca, for inspiring her. I know you've inspired many other kids out there to run. And like Mina said, please put your questions in the Q&A. I'll be monitoring that and sharing those. So, but to get us started, Becca, did you go for a run today?
I did. I woke up at 4:45 and ran 10 miles before I coached my daughter's soccer team.
That's awesome. Great way to start the day. I got up this morning too. I didn't go quite as far. I did about 7, but yeah. So just to get a little more background about your running, how did you come about to be a runner and what got you interested in that?
So I started running when I was 6 years old. My dad was a runner and he took me to a local race in Belmont, and I won my age group. I think I was the only one in my age group, but I got this huge Baybank, all this stuff from Baybank, and I got in the car and I thought, wow, that's cool. If I can run fast, I can win things like that. That's a kind of a cool concept. So I never stopped competing through college.
Yeah, that's awesome. My dad also, I think my dad's in the audience. Hi, Dad. He inspired me to run too. I think like you were speaking before this started, that I used to ride my bike with my dad as he was training for his marathons. So yeah, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the World Marathon Challenge and how that came about and what that whole event was like for you.
Sure. So I read about the World Marathon Challenge, which was 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. And so I reached out to the race director and I said, I'm from Boston. He lives in Ireland. And I said, tell me more about your race. And he said, well, you'd be making history. an American female has never finished they tried, but they weren't able to complete the 777. So you would make history. So I asked my daughter, I said, what do you think about this? She was 8 at the time. And I don't even think she knew how many continents there were. We had to sit down and study it. And then I remembered Antarctica. So that was totally stressful. And we said, okay, there's 7 continents and I have a shot at making history. And she was like, yeah, Mom, you can do it. I believe in you. And then I asked my parents and they were like, no, that sounds dangerous and really stressful for us. But I thought I'm going to go for it and, and hope for the best. And it took me about a year to train for the 777. I had flown to Canada to get the feels like temperatures of Antarctica. I bought a sauna for sauna training and to know what it would feel like to run in Africa and Dubai. And so I definitely did my homework, studied the courses, and was totally prepared to take on the challenge.
That's so cool. It's interesting how running affects so many other aspects of your life. You're talking about sauna training and how it plays into nutrition and sleep and recovery and all these different factors that go into being able to accomplish these long-term goals that you set out for yourself. I had a similar thing where I ran my second half marathon in 2017 and then kind of just kept building up the distance and laid out a bunch of goals for me. I know you have, I spoke in the intro a little bit about some of your other goals. How do you come up with these goals that you have and like, yeah, if you could just speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I always say, if my dreams don't scare my parents, they're not big enough. I can tell by the look on their faces if they're panicked, then my goals are pretty big. So I've run 17 Boston marathons. I believed in my base. When I took this challenge on, I had run 50 marathons. I ran marathon in Hawaii when it was 92 degrees. I ran a marathon in New Hampshire when it was -2. So I'm like, okay, you can run in these extreme conditions. My motto was get comfortable with being uncomfortable and you will make it. So just that meant running at all hours of the day and running on no sleep and, but then not getting injured and staying, I didn't want to get fatigued. I really wanted to finish the race strong. So, and to work really hard, put in a year's worth of really hard work and trust in my training. So I had a training plan and when things didn't go okay, or, I was starting to feel fatigued or injured, I just dropped off, I just regrouped, so I think it's important to regroup when things aren't going your way. But my goals are pretty big and all things that I love to do. I'm on a current journey to run the 50 states and that's been really fun. And my big goal right now is to run across America, which we'll talk about.
We've got our first question in the Q&A. How do you get from continent to continent and when do you sleep?
So we slept on the planes. So we crossed 16 time zones and that was very tough. I always knew what time it was in Boston. So whether or not I could call my daughter, I'd say, Siri, what time is it in Boston? And she'd say 3 a.m. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So we only averaged 10 hours per continent. So over the 7 days, it was run, eat, sleep, fly, repeat. And the first time I did this, we were on American Airlines. So my dad's concern was that I would put in all this hard work and effort and then a flight would be on delay. And ironically, flying out to the start, my flight was delayed, but the race hadn't begun yet. So I was like, this is really stressful. So luckily, but the second time I ran this another time, Tom Brady's company TB12 reached out to me and they said, we want to train you to run it faster and stronger. And I said, well, what do you know about running? And they said, nothing, not a whole lot, but we know a whole lot about the human body. So I'm like, if it works for Tom Brady, it most definitely will work for me. And so I ran it again. And the second time that I ran it, we were on a chartered plane. So we got to leave our stuff on the plane and just exit, run the race, come back to our stuff rather than like luggage, like bringing 2 things of luggage around, which was exhausting. So the second time was a lot easier for me.
Awesome. Encourage the audience to keep asking questions. We were talking a little bit about the pandemic and how that kind of has changed running. How have you stayed motivated and what are you doing with running during the pandemic when races aren't happening?
I'm staying positive, and my biggest advice right now is be patient. There's going to be another race and hopefully you're prepared for it. And it can be a trying time and that's okay. And so I'm running probably more than I ever have before. I'm more of a quality over quantity. Now I'm like building more of a base and running 6 days a week. I typically do better when I do 5, but now I'm just using the extra time to to run more miles, and there's no marathons really right now that I can travel to. So they are having a bunch of the world majors. The 6 majors are supposed to happen in September, this September. So I'm going to repeat the majors, but it was frustrating. I was checked into the New Mexico Marathon when the pandemic, just kind of before it was happening, and they canceled the flight. And I'm like, oh, this is frustrating, but just stay positive. It's out of my hands. There's nothing I can do. So stay positive, and use this time to work hard, and be prepared, because when you do have a race, you want to be totally prepared and ready to go.
That's awesome. I was the same way when we went on lockdown. I was just, I'm gonna go run even more. You free up some time with the work commute. I'm just gonna run even more. And then when my race, the 50 miler, was canceled, I'm just gonna run it anyways. That was a goal of mine. So I charted a 10-mile loop around Lexington and ran it 5 times and had a lot of fun. So that's really cool. We've got a couple more questions coming in. Does your daughter run with you also?
No. So my dad was a big runner, and I'm a big runner. And then my daughter's like, it's the whole sweating thing for me, Mom. And I was like, that's a big thing, Taylor. But actually she's played soccer, and I coach her team, and she's played for the last, 10 years, and she's a really good goalie. So when I'm feeling frustrated, we just take the soccer ball out and I try and shoot on her, and I can't. So it frustrates me even more. But she's 12 and turning 13. So it's great that she has her own sport. But I also played soccer in college too. So it is fun for me to go and kick around with her. But I can't get her to run. I don't know what it is. I don't know how I got the child that doesn't like to run. I don't know.
Yeah. My daughters, who are 8 and 5, they've been running with me a little bit, but now that they both have learned to ride bikes, they're more interested in bike rides, which is great because it's a nice, easy recovery ride around town for me. That's still a lot of fun. Yeah. A couple more questions in the Q&A. What is a world major?
The world majors consists of the most elite races in the world. So you have Boston, Chicago, New York, London, Tokyo, and Berlin. So the Abbott is the one that owns all of the majors, and it's just a privilege to run them.
What was the hardest of the 7 on the World Marathon Challenge?
The hardest was Antarctica, because you're running on a glacier and you fly in on the Russian Illusion, which is a military style plane. When you open the door, it takes your breath away. It's like negative 20 degrees. So it's freezing, and you have to have a tremendous amount of focus to run Antarctica. You just have to keep your guard up, because you have all odds against you. There's no Wi-Fi. It's absolutely freezing. The sun is so blinding that you have to be out of your elements and running in gear that you're not used to running in. I've never run in sunglasses in my life, and I had to wear these like goggle looking sunglasses to protect my eyes from the sun. And the pressure of being out in Antarctica, and it's very, very stressful. But then again, it's my favorite marathon, because you're like, I am in Antarctica running a marathon. Life is good, and it was really exciting. I really had the time of my life doing it. I think it was easier the second time. The first time it was more scary. The second time it was like, I got this, you've done this before. But then I was making sure to keep my guard up, because, you're running on a glacier, and it really is, it's stressful and scary, but the most beautiful place in the world. It really is.
Did you have to, you obviously would have to bundle up and stay warm, but did you have to change your shoes, or did you wear anything for running on the ice, or was that an issue?
No. Yeah. So some runners, you could run in Yak Tracks. I didn't. I'm endorsed by Newton Running, so I had to run in Newton, and just that meant that I had to have really warm socks on. So I found this like pair of warm socks that I could go in, and I trained in them in Canada, and it worked for me. So the problem was the jacket. I went to EMS and I said, I'm running a marathon and it's in Antarctica. So I needed to stay warm, and they brought out this tiny little jacket, and I'm like, what is that? I'm going to die in that. And they were like, this is what we climb Everest in. This is like breathable. And it's called the Summit Series jacket that they climb Everest in. It really saved me. It was really, really warm, but despite being really light, it protected me from the wind. And I knew that I was good to go because I trained in it. But coming from Boston at the time, it was like 0 degrees. So it wasn't, I mean, some people were coming from like Australia. I'm like, I don't know what you're going to do. Well, you guys don't even, you don't have a chance. But it was really, I had the confidence of, oh my gosh, you've trained through the heart of winter for Boston 17 times. You got this, you know, it's just going to be a little bit colder, but it was awesome.
Yeah, gear is critical. We've got a few more questions coming in. Training with Tom Brady's camp must have been amazing. What are some of the tips in training that helped you run it again faster and better? Anything learned that you can share?
Yeah. So pliability, you know, and working up against, I was in a gym and I was working and I think I'll get to this. I tore my groin the very first time that I ran the 777. And this is exactly what happened to the 2 other women that were trying to run the 777 that weren't able, you just get hurt. You know, when I came home to my doctor, I'm like, what happened? And she's like, 7 marathons on 7 continents and 7, your body just gave out. So I started doing pliability with TB12. And that's a lot of like resisting against your own body. So you're using like the weights and I crossed the finish line for the second time and felt and was totally fine, you know. And so the pliability works, checking in with your nutrition and your sleep and hydration, and they just keep a close eye on you, you know, and bouncing ideas back with them. That was really awesome. And then they flew to the finish line, which was like, you know, the problem was the pressure, you know, so you can't come in second place with Tom Brady's help. So I was like, this brings in a whole new level of stress that I didn't really realize that I was signing up for. But they flew to the finish line and they really helped, you know, going down to, at the time I was going to Foxborough. Now they have the Boston location. You can just go in and go in for a session and you learn so much, you know, so they really teach you a lot about your gait. We did a couple gait analysis, which I've done plenty of times before. And it was a huge help. And nutrition was a big thing. I love to eat ice cream. And so we still did that, but we just had a nice, honest conversation about it. And they were really helpful. I got my own coach there. And so it was nice to have one person to directly communicate with. And they become like your coach for the 777. Despite not knowing anything about running, they really like prepare you to run the race of your life through other ways.
I'll share one thing that helped me. I came to long distance running a little bit later than you. I was a sprinter when I was a kid, but a resource that people can check out is a book called 80-20 Running. It's a really simple premise that 80% of the time you're running slow. So like you can able to hold a conversation, speaking complete sentences, or you can measure it by your heart rate. That changed everything for me as a long distance runner. Before that, I would keep hurting myself. I was probably running too hard. And so that was one thing that really helped me. I got a question for me, Jeremy. Oh, it just scrolled up. Jeremy, are your goals expanding to include Antarctica? It does sound pretty cool, but I'm not sure if my wife is on this call or not, but I don't know how she would feel about me going down there. Right now, that's not a goal, but I'm definitely inspired, and that's really cool. Where is your favorite place to run locally?
I'm always on the Charles River, which is really awesome because I live in Belmont. It's like 2.25 miles from my house. So it's easy to pick up, easy to access. I can do a lot with that. The Arlington bike path is definitely one of my favorites. It runs through Lexington, as you know. And then this morning, something about the Heartbreak Hill. Like I just love to run. I love the idea of like going over to Heartbreak Hill and running the hills. So that's what I did this morning. And so I feel like being in Boston, we have so many options. Fresh Pond is a definite favorite. That's my Monday, Wednesday, Friday loop.
For me, as for the other Lexington residents, I love running through all the conservation lands around here, Willard's Woods, Lower Vinebrook, of course, the bike path. You can kind of connect a lot of those different areas in Lexington and come up with some good loops to run. Another question, I'm a recreational runner who is approaching 50. I've consistently run throughout my life, but every time I bump up against 7 to 8 miles in distance runs, something starts to hurt, ankle, knee, etc. Any advice? How do you avoid injury yourself?
I take a lot of Epsom salt baths 3 times a week, 2 times a week, and the recovery is really, really important for me. So what I do is I have Tuesday is track, workouts. Thursdays are hills, Saturdays are long runs, and then I have like 1 or 2 recovery days in there. But I listen to my body. I have friends that call me and they're like, I got a shin splint, and I'm going to run through it. I'm like, nobody's proud of you. Don't do that. That's not what you should be doing. You have to listen to your body, because your body will tell you if something's tweaky. Back off and pay attention. And of course, you can reach out to me if you're feeling like you need help with that. I'd be happy to help you and give you some tips that work for me. But recovery is like super important, especially for big goals like that.
Yeah, for me, I one of the problems I would keep running into is ankle problems, and finally developed a routine around strengthening my ankles. Doing some stretchy band exercises has made a world of difference. I do that for my knees too. I haven't had any knee problems, but just in case,
There's so many good workouts that you can do to strengthen. One thing that, like, when I had my calf injury, we worked the muscles around the calf. So I'm thinking this is my calf that's hurting, and they're like, no, it's hurting because these muscles gave out on you. I'm like, oh, that never even occurred to me. So doing that pliability that you can find online, any type of, to strengthen all the muscles that you can, helps so much.
Yeah. I found a lot of videos just on YouTube of different doctors showing exercises, which is really helpful.
Yeah, reach out. I'm happy to help you.
How do you pay to get to marathons and go from one to the other? Do you have a corporate sponsor?
Yeah, I'm endorsed, and I have an agent, Rob Friedman, that I've worked directly under, and he just is such an awesome guy, and he has great vision. And we mostly BMW, Lululemon, those are like my people that pay, Lion Wall Auto Group, and every time I have an idea, we just bring it to them, and whoever would like to pay at the time. That usually matter, like whatever race that I usually work my goals around whatever races I'm about to run.
Are there lots of people challenging 777? I guess there are lots of people running that and coming after your record.
Yeah, it's very stressful. Every time they run this race, I'm like, I can't even think. It's so stressful. But records are made to be broken, and it's okay when they do. And but I definitely think that there's every year there's 15. Well, when I ran the race, there were 15 people that ran it, and then the second time there's 50. So I hope.
With the Tom Brady stuff, did you get to meet Tom Brady?
I did. And Gronkowski, I raced Gronkowski and beat him.
Oh, very nice. That must have been fun.
Like a 5-year-old. They're really great. And then I ran the race director, Dave McGilvery, put on the Fenway Park Marathon and the Gillette Stadium Marathon, which means you run 117 times around.
Yeah.
And so they all put up, because TB12 knew me, they put up on the Jumbotron, like, Becca, you got this, and just turn left and stay focused. And it was, I really lost my mind running 117 times around, but I won that, and I won Fenway, and that was really, really fun. And
that's awesome.
And I got to throw out the first pitch at Fenway Park, which was awesome. So I got to meet David Ortiz, and I got to be in a commercial, Jordan's Furniture commercial with Elliot, which was awesome.
Nice. Another question on nutrition. Favorite nutrition during your long runs and marathons?
I'm a big protein. I don't really love the protein shakes, but definitely I always make sure I have protein, because when I'm eating my protein, I feel more fatigued, and that doesn't work for anybody, but I have a great electrolyte Ultima replenisher that you can get at Whole Foods. And my thing is just staying hydrated is so important for me, and sometimes harder. Sometimes I just come in the door and I'm wicked busy, or maybe I started around this morning when I started a 10-mile run, I wasn't as hydrated as I should have been. And so it's checking in more with my hydration.
Yeah, for me, last year running 50-kilometer race, I was trying so hard to stay ahead of my nutrition hydration needs that I was just downing this electrolyte mix. I was downing goos. It was a big mistake. I got very, very nauseous and ended up throwing up. But then after I threw up, I felt a lot better and was able to continue. And so this year, I mixed it up more, just had more options for myself when I was running. I still had some nausea, pretty bad, didn't throw up, but it happened way later.
Yeah.
So I made some improvements. I think that's one of the hardest things for me, at least, to figure out on these long runs is what am I going to eat that's not going to make me feel sick, but is going to give me the energy that I need to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And trial and error. When you're heading out for a long run, that practice there, don't practice. And my biggest mistake when running the 777, something I never thought of is I didn't run a marathon in another country before doing this, despite running so many marathons. So I remember eating some chicken and I was like, this is way different and spicy. And what was I thinking? And even like my favorite candy wasn't there. And
Yeah.
that was like something I said. So anybody that does a 777, I'm like, I strongly recommend going to run another marathon in another country just to know what that feels like. And honestly, in Colombia, the signs, I got lost in Colombia, and nothing will scare you like being lost in Colombia. And because I couldn't read that the sign, it said, you turn here. And I thought it was an arrow. So when I got home, I got back, they were like, where is this girl supposed to be winning? Where is she? And so I had to run like an extra 2 miles actually. And so I got home and I said to my dad, I was upset. I was crying. And I was like, I ran an extra 2 miles. And he's like, over 60 miles. I was like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, well, that's not the support I was looking for. So my dad's a Marine, and being raised by Marine, that was not so easy. He's definitely my hero.
Are you planning on running another 777?
I definitely would do it. The second time the locations changed and I was like, wow, these, except for Antarctica, was the same. But when the locations changed, I was like, I love, this is my favorite race. I absolutely love to travel and run. So if he changes the locations again, I will do it.
There's another question in the chat, actually. How is it being a woman in running? Is it a more accepted sport? Have you ever had any pushback?
Yeah, I have definitely been in line and have heard people talk about, there's no way she's going to do that. That's impossible. And they definitely, and that's so hurtful. And I was really like, I'm going to prove them wrong. And I was torn apart on like some of the biggest Wall Street Journal and some of the, and there's no way she can do this. It's impossible. 2 people tried to do it. And when I say I'm going to do something, believe me, because I'm going to do it. And if I don't do it, then I've done everything in my power to do it, so, but yeah, it was definitely stressful. The unknown, the fear of the unknown, but I always believed in myself, and even like people would be like, oh, I'm going to follow you because that's impossible. And I'm like, how about you follow me because you believe in me, and that was really, really stressful. But I kept my circle pretty tight. And only when I was running the 777, I just talked in my family and friends and coaches and my team, and just stayed positive. And I think this was a hard goal for people to understand. But the running community is so awesome. And I've been surrounded by men my entire life. I've only ever been coached by a man. My dad is like, we're very, very close. And so I'm kind of only used to being coached by men.
Would you have any advice, or what would you tell young girls who hear stuff like that, the pushback type of things? Do you have any advice? Sorry?
Believe in yourself, and aim high, shoot for the moon. You have nothing to lose, and when you do those things and believe in yourself, stay positive, and it's okay to make a mistake, and I've messed up on some of the biggest stages in my life, and they've built the runner that I am today.
It's great advice. Will you be a trainer again for the New England Kids Triathlon this year with the Belmont Recreation Center?
Yes. That's one of my favorite things that I do. I love that team. Those are the kids that really totally inspire me. And, I built my foundation, and I coach the varsity soccer team here in Belmont, and I do some work with the hockey team. And I love to help and be involved in the community, and especially those type of things. And when I grew up, I used to have to run with the boys because there were no girls teams like that, like there are today. And, but this triathlon team is awesome. They're really inspiring.
That's one of your goals, right? Ironman and triathlon.
Yeah. So I started training for Kona in beginning as soon as the pandemic happened, and I swam my first mile at Walden Pond, and I biked like 70 miles, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So I wanted to do Kona after I finished the 50 states, but with no 50 states happening right now, I've been focusing on that.
Kind of already answered this one, but which continent is your favorite to run on? Would you consider visiting it just for fun? Would you visit Antarctica just for fun?
No. Oh, then there's the problem is there's no Wi-Fi, and I'm not like totally need to be, but like, I need to know that my daughter's okay. So unless I brought my daughter, because imagine that you're like dropped off in the middle of nowhere and there's no connection to home. You can call on a satellite phone. I didn't even know how to pick it up or dial it out. I was like, what do I do with this thing? I don't understand it. So but it is, if you have the opportunity to go to Antarctica, go. It's the coolest literally place on earth. I also I always said, I'm going to come back to one of these continents and spend more than 10 hours here. Australia is definitely one of my favorites. I mean, like that was in Dubai. Dubai was so much fun. So the locations were really cool. Even Colombia was like amazing, and every one of the locations were amazing.
And you mentioned you hurt yourself. You had an injury, a groin injury, but that was before you still had a couple marathons to go, or a marathon to go.
That was really frustrating. I was at mile 2 in marathon 6, and I had just gotten off the phone with my dad. I said, you can go to bed. I'm good. I have 2 more. Let me just get through this one, and then I'll be 1 marathon away from making history. So at mile 2, I just felt this tear in my groin. My body just gave out, and I was laying on the ground, and I was like, I thought of the refrain that Tom Brady said in the Boston Globe: we didn't come this far to just come this far. And I was like, I can spend 4 hours in a lot of pain, or 40 years explaining to the world how I almost did it, but couldn't do it. And it was like, I got up, I guess I just didn't really realize the pain that I was really in. So after, a doctor came over and he said, let me do a little ultra pack on, see what's going on here. And he said, you've torn it. And I'm like, because if it was a blood clot, they weren't going to clear me to run. And it was swollen in black and blue. So he said, it's a blood clot, and you can run if you can run. So I'm like, I'm running. I took a 13-hour flight to Australia, and I was crying and I was upset, and I was like, I got to just finish this marathon. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But this airline stewardess came over and she said, I know who you are and I know what you're doing, and let me switch out your ice pack for you. And she was at mile 23. So she came, she had a layover, she said, and those are the things that you remember for the rest of your life. And she was crying and she's like, I knew you were going to finish. And, to have that support. I got this email from a doctor at Harvard. He said, run with your toes facing all the way in. You're going to take the pain off your groin, and you use other muscles. And I was like, I got it. I'm going to try it. I'm desperate. So when the Associated Press flew to the finish line, I had to straighten my feet back out so that I wouldn't look like a duck when I was running. And he was like, and he like, all of that, that's the stuff and the friendships that I made along the 777, because the highs are really high, but the lows are really, really low. So you go through it together over the 7 days. And the second time I ran it, Dave McGilvery, he's the race director of the Boston Marathon, he ran across America, and he was like, well, this is over in 7 days. What's so hard about it? I'm like, it's very hard. I'm like, you're crossing 16 time zones, and you're running it. Majority of these races were at 10 o'clock at night. So you'd fly all the way to Australia and you'd be there for 10 hours, and 6 of those hours were at night, and that was like tough. And then, so when I ran with him the second, he ran the race the second time, I said, day 7, can you believe we're finally in Miami? And he's like, yes, I can believe it. It's been a very long 7 days. And we laughed.
Nice. Just more of a comment. What a nice flight attendant. Isn't it great to get support where you least expect it? I experienced that too with my 50 miler that I did a little over a month ago. The town of Lexington came out and supported me, and friends I know, strangers out there. It was definitely something that really helped me get through it as well. Yeah. But there are some questions in the chat. Did you run when you were pregnant with your daughter?
I did. So I wanted to keep my Boston Marathon streak alive. So I was like, okay, well, I went, I had my daughter in January and in December, and ran the Boston Marathon in April. And it was nice to have a little time to myself when, newborn's tough. And I would get out and run when I could. So the point was like to keep the Boston streak alive. And so
how long is your streak?
17. So I just hit the virtual was the 17. Boston, and like I was like, wait, we get to be the race director of the Boston Marathon for the day, let's make the most of it. So we ran from Belmont around the finish to the finish line, through the finish line, and then through Waltham, and it was awesome.
That's cool. As a world-class runner, who have you been most excited to meet?
I ran with Meb Klefeski. He won the Boston Marathon. One of my friends, Shalane Flanagan, she's pro runner. She gave me the best advice and she just said, when you're running the marathon, ask yourself, are you doing everything you can be doing right now to win this race? So if you ask yourself like, and every time I ask myself, am I doing everything I can? You've left your daughter, you've left your, to travel to, I'm all the way, even if I'm doing the majors and I'm in London and I'm running, I'm like, am I doing everything I can be doing? Am I laying it all out there? When you kind of check in with yourself like that, you work that much harder. You're like, no, I can step it up a little bit, even if you feel like you're in pain, you got to make it worth it, and I thought that was really awesome. But the running community, I mean, those runners are just my absolute favorite. Even Dean Karnazes is, when I ran with Dean Karnazes and it was Hawaii, it was 92 degrees. He's a pro runner. He said, how are you doing, kid? And I'm like, I'm hot. Actually, I have blisters on my shoulders. He's like, tuck in behind me. And he paced me like, who am I? And he paced me. And that was awesome. I'll never forget that.
Do you have any like mantras or anything you're talking a little about what you're thinking, your self-talk? Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, get comfortable with being uncomfortable in everything that you do, and that uncomfortable becomes your new normal. So that's supposed to feel like that, and that's why when I tell people maybe they're training for a marathon, are you doing your track workouts? Because when you're doing those track workouts, those mile repeats, you're kind of like embracing that, like, this hurts. So when you get to mile 23 and 24, you're already there mentally because you're doing it every Tuesday, or you're running your hill workouts every Thursday, or so. I have a hard time, if I'm being honest, when people say, oh, I want to do what you're doing. I just don't have time. I manage an ice cream shop. I own a daycare. I have a 13-year-old daughter. If it's important to you, you'll find the time. And my life is like a puzzle. But I'm very fortunate to be doing what I absolutely love to be doing.
Yeah, that's cool. We just sort of talked about your other endeavors, but somebody asked if you're a full-time runner.
Yeah, so I kind of do everything. Like my agent's like, close your daycare, close the ice cream shop, but I don't want to. I love doing what I'm doing. I'm not always there. I may go a week without going into the daycare or going into the ice cream shop because I'm focusing and training. But I really love motivational speaking around the world is really fun for me. But there's none of that happening right now. So.
What is the ice cream shop?
Woozies in Belmont. It used to be Brigham's. So my real good friend, he's Italian. He said, if I buy this ice cream shop, will you help me with it? And I said, absolutely, I'll help you with it. So we have a lot of fun. I have an ice cream flavor named after me, the Becca 7, which is 7 ingredients. And my daughter has a severe nut allergy, so there's no nuts in it.
Very cool. Have you competed at the Olympics?
No, I know. I actually stopped competing at the elite level in college. And then I ran a couple, obviously I did, if there's a race that I think I can win or a world record, then I'll go after it. But I love to just run, and I just like to qualify for the Boston Marathon. And so, but if I see a goal, or, one of my big goals is to run across America, and that's 54 miles a day for 56 days. And so I will train really hard for a year to do that. And but I kind of regroup with the year, but with the goal. So if there's something I think I can win, or something that I can set a world record in, then I'm going to go for it.
54 miles or 56 days. There's got to be a lot of discomfort and getting uncomfortable in that. I like to think about how on the other side of pain and suffering is happiness, and that's how you grow and become a stronger, better person.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, that's my Guinness Book of World Records right there, and I call it blood, sweat, and tears. And so blood, sweat, and tears go into half of everything that I've done, and but it's always worth it. I've never regretted going on a run. I've never regretted running a race. So
yeah. What more in running can you possibly do other than the 50 states?
No, well, that's the hard thing about these goals, is once the what's next is tough.
Yeah.
So that's really tough. That's why I like to help the community and be involved in their goals. So once I finish I don't know how I'm going to top doing the.
I can briefly talk about my goals, because I did this half marathon, 50K, 50 miler. Next year, looking for 100K race, and then 100 miler. And actually, I've thought about this. When I do a 100 miler, the first one I do, I want it to be like an easy one, relatively, not like ton of elevation gain, in the mountains. And the second one will be that harder one. But another goal that I have for myself is to come back to the marathon distance and try and qualify for Boston and go faster.
I can help you. Yeah, it's definitely worth it. You know, that's definitely a great goal. Yeah. And when I crossed the finish line of the 777, I got all these race directors from ultra marathoners that said, come run our race. And I'm like, I can't do a 100-mile race. And they're like, you just did that. So 2 of the marathons were within 24 hours. I ran Morocco at 11 a.m. and towed the line in Madrid at midnight. So that was like, if I could just get through those 2, then I'll be home free. But next up was Dubai, and that's where I got hurt.
Someone suggested that maybe I could run one of the 54-mile legs with you. I'd be happy to do. I do one.
Yeah, I would love that.
I'm not a big. You were talking about this earlier that you run 5 or 6 days a week. I'm an every other day kind of guy. I'll do other things on the bike and strength train, but
quality over quantity. I recommend like not just running for purpose. Like you're doing your track workout, you're doing your hill repeat. Just switch it up. It just helps.
Yeah. How did you decide to write a children's book?
So the children inspired me. They were like, I motivational talk around the world. They're like, do you have a movie? And no, I don't have a movie. Do you have a book? And I'm like, well, I could write a book, you know, and put 100% of the proceeds into my foundation. And that's kind of a win-win. You know, writing a book was a foreign language to me. I didn't know how to do that. So I teamed up with Mascot Books, and I wanted somebody that focused on children's books so that they would kind of know what the kids were looking for. And it's gone. It's done really well. Yeah. You just send a picture and you're like, oh, this is really fun. So they really hold your hand through the process, but you get to write your own book, which is really exciting.
Yep, and I'm a big fan of this book, like I said in the intro, and we are going to save some time in just a few minutes for Becca to share her screen and read this book with all of you. So if you have any more questions for the next 5 minutes or so, please put them in the Q&A. How do we get a signed copy?
From beccapizzi.com. So BECCAPIZZI.com. And then if you purchase from there, just put in the notes exactly what you'd like. And you can either pick it up or I can send it out, either one.
You know, when I bought this book, when I was first invited to this event and I looked up your book and I purchased it, I didn't realize it was a children's book. I thought it was a full-length book. So
yeah,
it's really cool that, you know, be able to read it with the kids, and it's a lot of fun. There is a running group called Hey Runners in Lexington, and we have a group run every Saturday morning at I'm not sure what time. I think it was at 7:30, right? Somebody wrote that, and you're invited to run with us. And so the depot is right in Lexington Center. So that's sounds like fun. Any other questions from the audience, or any questions from you, Mina, or anything else you'd like to share, Becca?
No, I'm good. My dad titled the book, which is really fun. I was just missing a title, and how do you not have a title for your book? You've had so much time to think about it. And so I said, Dad, I'm just missing a title. He's like, what about Becca's Feet on Feet? So that was fun that he titled it.
Awesome. All right. Well, questions seem to have. Do you run with a mask? Any tips?
Yeah, all the time.
That's the mandate now, as of yesterday, that in all public spaces we have to be wearing a mask.
Yeah, what works for me the best is because the mask gets sweaty is the buffs. So the buffs tend to really help. They're breathable. I know Under Armour makes an awesome breathable mask too, but for me it's the buffs that I can just put on my face and keep it there. They tend to stay.
I tend to run, or I run with surgical masks, but I'll admit that before today, if nobody was around, I was pulling it down, because it is, and then I try and look at it as like, hey, this is just an extra challenge. It's a little bit harder to breathe.
Yeah, get uncomfortable.
If it's over and I don't have to wear a mask, it'll be easier to run.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, if there's no more questions, maybe we could dive into your book.
I'll do screen share. Let's see here. Can you see it?
Yep.
You hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Yep, you got it.
I just wrote this daughter, I said I wrote this book for my daughter Taylor. She's my biggest inspiration in life. And when people ask me what I think about when I run, the answer is her. So she's gonna be 13 in December, which is exciting. Okay. Hi, I'm Becca and I love to run. I run every single day, no matter what the New England weather brings. I ran my first race with my dad in my hometown of Belmont, Massachusetts, when I was just 6 years old. Running is my passion, and it has taken me all over the world. My favorite race distance is called a marathon, which is 26.2 miles long. That's as long as 461 football fields. The very first marathon I ran was the Boston Marathon. I grew up cheering for marathon runners from the famous Heartbreak Hill, and I'll never forget the first time I crossed the finish line on Boylston Street and received my medal. Running this race is my annual tradition, and some of my favorite things about the Boston Marathon are the Boston Red Sox baseball game score updates along the route, the father-son running duo of Team Hoyt, the iconic Sicko sign, and the deafening crowd support throughout the 8 towns along the way. It's always on Patriots Day, Boston's favorite holiday. One day, I read about a race called the World Marathon Challenge. The race consists of running 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. That's 183 miles in just 1 week. From the freezing ice caps in Antarctica to the hot desert lands of Africa, I would be pushed to my limits and beyond. An American woman had never completed the race before. Could I make history and be the first one? I asked my daughter Taylor if she thought I could do it, and she jumped up and shouted, "Yes, I believe in you, Mom. Finish strong." And that's how I got my motto from my biggest inspiration. The first marathon was in Union Glacier, Antarctica. Usually only penguins live in Antarctica, but I actually got to go visit. To get there, we had to fly on the Russian Illusion, a military plane that could land us safely on a glacier. Glaciers are made of compact snow and ice, which is what we would be running on. The wind was fierce and the sun was so bright, but the Antarctic ice-capped mountains were a nice distraction from the cold. I stayed focused and finished strong. I waved the American flag proudly when I crossed the finish line. 1 marathon down, 6 to go. I left the cold ice behind and moved on to my next continent, South America. I was so lucky to have friends and family on each continent to run with me and cheer me on. Their hugs and familiar faces was exactly what I needed, even more than aspirin or bandages. My friend Jenny ran the marathon with me in Punta Arenas, Chile. The course ran by the Strait of Magellan, and having her by my side meant the world to me. Taylor had written me a note to read after I crossed the finish line on each continent. This one read, "If you're chilly in Chile, eat chili," which is exactly what I did. The third marathon took me to South Beach in Miami, Florida. I definitely had a home course advantage being back in the USA. More friends and family cheered for me along the course, including my college coach. We ran this marathon on the Miami boardwalk with a lot of palm trees lining the course. After the marathon, I hugged my family and friends and was well on my way to accomplishing my goal. I was about halfway through the challenge when I got to Europe for the 4th marathon. The rolling hills in Madrid, Spain reminded me of Heartbreak Hill in Boston. At Taylor's school, Wellington Elementary, she and her classmates were tracking my progress and would even work on homework related to my journey. I got to video chat with Taylor's class from all over the world, except for Antarctica. Did you know they have no Wi-Fi there? I called home on a satellite phone instead. As soon as I finished the marathon in Madrid, I was on to the next continent. I was feeling confident, but fatigue was setting in. So I remember what my friend and mentor, Warren Waugh, one of my marathon sponsors, always said, "We got this." Seeing the land, eat, sleep, fly, repeat. We averaged 10 hours per continent. Right when we touched down to land, I'd put on my running sneakers, change into my race gear, and go straight to the marathon. In between marathons, I'd focus on recovery and foam rolling. Seeing the landscape of Marrakesh, Morocco for the 5th marathon was so cool. My friend Janet biked with me the entire marathon, and it was so much fun to have her there. The camels in Morocco were something to remember. After finishing the race, I boarded to the next flight. This one was in Dubai in Western Asia. Having completed 5 marathons in just 5 days, I was gaining momentum and only had 2 more left to go. Even though I was told many times that running 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days was impossible, not finishing this race was not an option. But my confidence was tested in Dubai, a city in the United Arab Emirates. I promised myself that even if I fell down at any point in the races, I would get back up and finish strong. I injured myself and the pain was constant, but I completed that marathon like I did every other, 1 mile at a time. When I crossed the finish line, I felt as tall as the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, and one that I ran right past in Dubai. When we landed in Australia for the final marathon, I was exhausted. I was only 26.2 miles away from accomplishing this feat. The crowd support from the Australians at midnight was awesome. Crossing the finish line 10,086 miles away from home with my family watching live on Skype was something I will never forget. The first words out of my mouth when crossing the finish line were, "We did it." Making history by becoming the first American woman to cross the finish line on all 7 continents was incredible. When I got back to Belmont, the whole town came out to celebrate with me. The town of Belmont declared February 4th to be Becca Pizzi Day, and I got into the Guinness Book of World Records. I even got to be in a commercial, and I threw out the first pitch at Fenway Park. I was so proud to represent my country and even prouder to bring my medals home to Taylor. My advice to you is find your world marathon challenge. Find whatever it is that you are passionate about. Dream big, take chances, and always believe in yourself, because when you do, anything is possible.
Awesome. Thank you. Such an inspiration. I highly recommend that people go out and pick up a copy of this. There was one question about your book. Who is the illustrator?
Marco and Primo. So, and the way the process works is you just kind of talk to Mascot about what you're looking for. I love the book, The Polar Express, and it's called like realism art. So they make it look like it's a photograph. And he just sent me, they kind of reach out to their illustrators, and he sent me this one. And I was like, I don't think I need to see anybody else. That's good work on my end. And and he was a joy to work with.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Becca. You're a huge inspiration. This has really been a great time. Thank you to the audience for all your questions. I'll hand it back to you, Mina. Thank you, Becca.
That was amazing. Your reading of your story is just inspiring. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I wanted to remind everybody that you can buy a signed book from Becca on her website. I put the link in the chat, and I will send it out in the recap. Jessie wanted me to invite you to her running group on those Saturday mornings, the Hey Runners. So you're more than welcome to join them if you're free on a Saturday morning and want to run, which sounds like you do.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And I want to thank you for being here. Jeremy, that was a fantastic job of asking the questions and telling your own story. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thanks for us.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yep. And thanks everybody for coming. We hope to see you again at some of our programs in the future. So have a wonderful day. It's beautiful out. Find your marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Go for a run.
Go for a run.
Or walk.
Or walk, that's right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.